guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Jenna here with Sweet Tooth Baking. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my new baking videos. Today's video is the first in my new series called Cake Basics, where we're going to be talking about all the things you need to do to make a perfect cake. The topic today is 3 mistakes you could be making when using fondant. Let's get started. The first mistake is not kneading enough. So fondant usually comes as a big block. You can get them in like 5 kilogram bags or even smaller than that. So when you're touching fondant for the first time, as you can see, it's fairly crumbly and not very elastic. So the key to get it to be really nice and elastic is to knead it. When you're kneading the fondant, you're adding your own body heat into it, which is warming everything up and making it really nice and easy to use. If you're not kneading the fondant enough, it's not going to be elastic. I've kneaded this fondant for maybe about 5 seconds, just using the palm of my hands because I can get most of my strength from my arms right here in the palm of my hands. So after kneading for just a few seconds, as you see, you can just break the fondant apart and this is what it looks like. After kneading for a little bit longer, if you pull the fondant apart, you can see that the fondant is becoming really nice and stretchy. But at this point, it still looks a little bit rough, so we're going to continue kneading it. Been another couple seconds and I'm done kneading at this point, and as you see, when I start to pull, it becomes even more elastic. So this is a good point for your fondant to be. Another tip is to put your fondant in the microwave for at least 5 seconds just to get it really nice and soft and easier to work with. So that's an option for if you don't want to be kneading for as long of a time. The second problem you could be facing when working with fondant is using too much cornstarch. So as we knead, the sugars start to warm up and the fondant becomes really sticky and tacky. I like to use cornstarch on my surface just to prevent the fondant from sticking onto the counter. But if you're using too much cornstarch, you could be causing your fondant to dry out, which will lead to cracks later on when you're decorating your cake. What I like to do is this is my dedicated fondant cornstarch. I just like to put my hand right in it. My fingers are coated in cornstarch and I just drop a little bit onto the counter and spread it out. Another option is for you to get a cornstarch poof. It's like a little, almost like a nylon bag filled with cornstarch, and you can kind of just dab it onto your counter. I don't have one and this method has been working for me. At this point, I can just add my fondant on top and then I can knead my fondant however thin I want to make it. If you're kneading your fondant, you can knead it in a couple directions. Just make sure to keep turning your fondant as you go. If you feel like it's starting to get sticky underneath here, you can just do the same thing again. Just a little bit of cornstarch with your fingers, spread it out, and then continue to knead. The last mistake you could be making is when it comes to dyeing your fondant. So you need to be using specific types of gel food coloring or oil-based food coloring rather than liquid food coloring. Liquid food coloring has just a small amount of pigment and a lot of moisture. You don't want to be adding too much moisture into this sugar paste because you're just going to turn it into a sticky mess. So the better alternative is to use a gel coloring or an oil-based coloring. When coloring fondant, you're going to need to use the few things that we've already discussed in this video. The first is kneading, so using again the palm of your hand, and the second is to use cornstarch to prevent it from sticking on your counter. So with the oil-based colorings, you need to make sure that you're mixing it well before you're adding the color because they tend to separate. I like to start with just a couple drops directly onto my fondant, just like so, and then I start to incorporate the color by kneading the fondant. The more we knead, the more the color incorporates into the fondant. It's a small piece, so it's kind of awkward to do it, but you get the point. As you see, the fondant is becoming more sticky. So this is again where we need to use a little bit of cornstarch just to prevent it from sticking onto our counter or onto our hands. With oil-based colorings, the color tends to develop over time, so you can start with a little bit and wait to see how it develops. With gel colorings, the amount that you add is going to be the color that you get. Now I'll do the same thing with the pink. I just like to add a little drop directly to my fondant, mix it in with my hands, and start kneading. Other ways I like to incorporate color into my fondant is by rolling it into a log and then kind of twisting it on top of itself, just to make sure that I'm getting the color nice and incorporated in my piece of fondant. And there you have it. In today's video, we've covered 3 potential mistakes you could be making when using fondant. The first being that you're not kneading it enough. The second being that you're using too much cornstarch and potentially drying your fondant out. And the third being that you're using the wrong type of food coloring to dye your fondant. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching today's video. Thank you so much, and don't forget to subscribe. Now let's begin. Today's episode is going to be... So what are three things that... Another good...